This will be a brief overview of our 1972 Cessna 150L model. It's not your standard out-of-the-factory L model for a Cessna. It's had a Ralph Bolin tailwheel conversion, and there's also been some stole modifications as well, including a leading edge and wingtip. So you get a much slower stall speed. But it's got this standard 100 horsepower motor in it, so even though you might be able to get into a strip, you might not be able to get out of it because it's still got a 100 horsepower. The first thing you notice when you get into the airplane, obviously it sits tail low, so your over-the-nose visibility is going to be reduced. Big thing I like to do is let people know that this pitch attitude that you're in right now as you sit in the aircraft is your landing pitch attitude for a 3-point landing. So what I usually do with people is I'll actually pick up the tail while you're sitting in the airplane so you can see what that level pitch attitude would be when you come in and do a wheel landing. So as you taxi around right now, that's the pitch attitude that you're looking for when you come in to do a 3-point landing. 3-point being the main gear touching down at the same time as the tail gear. I'll go ahead and speed up the video here until we get to the end of the runway, but the takeoff what we're going to do here is going to be a normal takeoff where we are going to pick the tail up to a level pitch attitude and then get to our rotation speed and then rotate the aircraft to that positive pitch attitude to come up off the ground. So usually right around 55 miles an hour indicated is when you're thinking about going ahead and taking off. I'll go ahead and speed this up again, and then I'll go into the next iteration of maneuvers that I like to do with first-time students to get a feel for the airplane, and that's a power-on stall. So this will be a stall in the takeoff configuration. So what we'll do here is we'll simulate the aircraft being at that rotation speed, apply full power, and then pitch up, and we'll exaggerate the pitch to be extremely nose high, and then we'll get the full stall in this aircraft. We'll transition into real time here in just a second, but the bottom of the green arc in this airspeed indicator, the stock airspeed indicator, indicates 55 miles an hour being your stall speed in the clean configuration, the takeoff configuration. But what you'll see in this aircraft with the modification, it'll get much slower. So you might see the airspeed indicator indicating actually about 45 miles an hour. You're going to see me point to the airspeed indicator in a second. That's just me indicating I'm at that rotation speed, where I'm going to go ahead and start pitching the aircraft up to that excessive pitch attitude to induce that stall in the takeoff configuration. We'll get that stall horn in a second. That'll be our first indication of the impending stall, and we'll keep that pitch up, and then we can expect the nose to completely break as it enters a full stall. So after we get that full stall, we go ahead and recover, and from here I actually enter into the full stall in the landing configuration. So you might see the flap indicator up by the vent there start to slowly work its way down. It's going through about 10 degrees now, and I'm adding the flaps in to do a stall series in the landing configuration. That'd be full flaps. This stock airspeed indicator, the bottom of the white, which is your stall speed in the landing configuration, is indicating about 47 miles per hour. But when you see this full stall break, the indicator is almost pointing straight up. For the recovery, I'm going to go ahead and apply full power, and I'm bringing the flaps up to about 20 degrees. I'm confirming the aircraft performance. You can see me pointing at the vertical speed indicator, and once I know that I've got a positive rate, I'll incrementally bring up the flaps 10 degrees at a time and confirm my performance between each flap iteration. So as we bring up our final flaps and we are now in the clean configuration, I accelerate to a cruise speed and I perform a series of steep turns, one to the left and then one to the right at 45 degrees angle of bank. Once the upper air work's complete and the student feels comfortable with the aircraft, we'll work our way back down to the traffic pattern altitude. Might be a good time to do a simulated engine failure just to see where you're at. Make sure the carburetor heat is on, check the throttle position, we can check the mixture. Go ahead and make sure the fuel selector is on. Go to the left-hand side, we can check both the left, right, both mag, make sure it's operating correctly, and then make sure the primer's in and locked. I'm going to demonstrate two landings. The first one will be a wheel landing, and then the second one will be a full stall landing. That'll be a landing in the 3-point attitude. I'll go ahead and speed the video up until we start getting into the landing sequence. But for the wheel landing, we're looking for that same pitch attitude we had on the takeoff roll, where I had picked the tail up and had a wings level pitch attitude. So typically around 75 to 70 miles an hour, coming up a beam your landing point. Then on your base leg, you're looking at slowing down to anywhere between 65 and 70 miles an hour. And then on your final, for that wheel landing, probably about 65 to 60 miles per hour. And you want to have enough energy left over where you're able to pitch the nose up to arrest your descent and have that level pitch attitude and basically fly the airplane onto the runway before going to an idle power setting. You'll hear me reiterate a lot about the longitudinal axis of the aircraft and its relation to the landing surface. So you want to keep that tail behind you, and the longitudinal axis of the aircraft needs to be lined up with your landing surface. If you're not lined up with that landing surface, as soon as your wheels make contact with the ground, you're going to veer in the direction that the aircraft is pointing. In a tailwheel, you only have so much rudder control authority to get that nose back over to where it needs to be lined up with the landing surface. So having that longitudinal axis lined up with the runway prior to touchdown is going to be a big solution to any problem you might have for directional control. You'll learn the aircraft over time to figure out what too far left, too far right is for the nose, and also the rudder control authority as the aircraft changes speeds. All right, we're transitioning back to normal speed. You're going to hear me reference the flaps. You can see the flap indicator on the left-hand side underneath that vent. And I'll talk about the power application. Don't forget the carb heat along with that as you bring the power out of the green.
Bring the power back to about 1500 RPM. You can add your first Scotch and flaps. About 3 seconds for every 10 degrees. About 40 degrees total. I already know I'm a little bit high. I can take power out. 60 is about plenty slow enough until you get established on final. Turn in the base leg, reassess your altitude, and add another 10 degrees of flaps, another 3 seconds, that's 30. Reassess again, another 10 degrees. Wheel landing. Wheels touch down. You can keep the tail up. Slowly it comes down. Neutral pressure here. No sense driving the tail wheel into the ground. We'll taxi to the end. Not breaking the nose up on this one because we're already at a takeoff pitch attitude right
airspeed indicator, and you can see where I put some white and green tape above the standard airspeed indicator markings. This more accurately depicts the performance of this aircraft. So the bottom of the white would be your stall in the landing configuration, and the bottom of the green would be your stall in the clean configuration. The little blue mark at the 55 mile an hour point is a defined minimum maneuvering speed, and all that is just a reminder that you have bank protection at that airspeed up to 30 degrees and your aircraft will still fly. So your normal approach speed is 30% over your stall speed. This is at 40.4% over your stall speed, and that affords you the opportunity to bank the aircraft up to 30 degrees and still be flying. Let's take a look at the POH here, and we'll look at the performance tables. And from this, I validated the takeoff performance is pretty much as depicted for the stock aircraft. The landing distances do vary a little bit. You can see the baseline for this on a standard day they have is 445 feet of landing distance. I've actually been able to land this aircraft in less than 300 using an approach speed less than the recommended 60 miles an hour. At the home airfield of Pittsfield, I've been able to land this aircraft right around 40 miles per hour and be able to make that first turnoff. That's less than 300 feet.